Greetings, fellow Bible readers. Welcome to week 4 of our Bible read-through. This week, we get our first taste of laws in the Old Testament, as well as a description of the tabernacle, where the Old Testament Israelites worshiped for a good chunk of their history. Because of those facts, I'm going to be encouraging you to do a little bit more skimming in this section since we aren't dealing with stories. Our goal is not to get bogged down in all the details, but to capture the highlights of what's being talked about. So let's get into the things to look for with the readings for each day. On day 1, we continue to see the story of God's love and care for the Israelites as he brought them out of slavery in Egypt. And the big thing that we really want to focus in on is the giving of the 10 Commandments. You'll want to pay attention to how God emphasized the importance of those 10 Commandments to the people of Israel. Then on day 2, we begin to get the giving of the laws that God had for those Israelites to function as a nation. And it's important as you read through those laws to remember that intention, that they're designed for a nation, not for a church. They're meant for people who have a sinful nature and are going to rebel against God. And that's good to keep in mind because there are some things in that law code that might initially, as Christians, strike us as a little strange. Like, why would God permit things like divorce or give provisions for slavery? And it's important to remember Jesus' words when he himself explained that in the New Testament. He explained to the Pharisees that the reason God gave laws about things like divorce, which God doesn't like to begin with, is because people have hard hearts and they're going to do sinful and wrong things anyway. And so God was giving laws to put a check on that sinful impulse. Then on day 3, we get the beginnings of the description of the furnishings of the tabernacle, the place of worship for the Old Testament Israelites. You can do a fair amount of skimming in this section. You will want to pay attention to the ratification of the law in chapter 24. There's kind of an interesting connection with the New Testament that comes up in that section, so you want to pay attention to that. Then on day 4, we get a section that deals a lot with the consecration of the priests and the garments that they wear and the details connected to them. And as you read that section, something I'll encourage you to think about, maybe have as a question in the back of your mind, is why God spends so much time focusing in on those priests who would minister at the tabernacle. So kind of puzzle on that in your mind as you read through that section. Then on day 5, we get a little bit more of description of that tabernacle. And in addition, we get the story of the Israelites' rebellion against God in making the golden calf. And so watch that story unfold. And it kind of flows into day 6, because on day 6, we get the final culmination of that with Moses wanting to see God's glory and God revealing that glory to him by proclaiming who he is. So you want to pay attention on day 6 to the very opening part of chapter 34 where God describes who he is and what he's like. The rest of the section continues to deal with the construction of the tabernacle. And so as you think about that and you read through that, you want to do a little bit more skimming again. And then on day 7, we get even more talk about the tabernacle and its furnishings. And so again, skimming is the order of the day. As you skim through those sections, all of those sections on the different days that deal with the tabernacle, one thing to think about is that the work that would go on at that tabernacle would picture the saving work of Jesus, the sacrifice he would make on the cross. And if you think about that, it helps you to understand why God would put such a priority on having the best for this tabernacle, to drive home to those people of Israel already in the Old Testament the value of what the Savior would do for them. That's all that we have for this week. We'll see you next week.